Today, I will focus mainly on 3 points. The first, the relevance of the Astana Summit and how the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly is trying to revive its spirit. The second, following the theme of this session, the relevance of the OSCE activities. And the third, the added value of members of parliament. Now, some of you have reminded, I was myself in Astana as a young employee of the Parliamentary Assembly 10 years ago. Besides the very cold weather and atmosphere, I remember a great meeting indeed. It was the meeting, maybe some of you will remember, it was also one of those days when the WikiLeaks scandal came up. So there was also a lot of discussions among leaders about the first reports about WikiLeaks. I remember a very heated discussion between President Berlusconi and Hillary Clinton on some of the cables that came up at that time. But what was special about the summit was, and this is something that I've often recalled, it was not the usual liturgy of ministerial meetings. Marc Perrende-Brichambeau, our former Secretary General, knows this very well. We've had many ministerial meetings where normally you have the foreign ministers coming, delivering their speech, then engaging in some bilateral meetings, but really not engaging in the spirit and the idea of the OSCE. Some of them don't even know why, what is that they are there for. They've come, they've delivered a speech that their ambassadors has prepared, and then they leave or they engage with their colleagues on other matters not pertaining to the OSCE. This was different in Astana, and I think this was the biggest success of the Kazakh chairmanship. You managed to get lots of leaders there and really focusing on the OSCE dossiers. And I remember this, not wearing a jacket is a testimony to Kanat Sadubayev, because I remember the 2 a.m. meetings that Marc Perrende-Brichambeau was referring to, when him and Kairat going back and forth from a room trying to find an agreement on the last document. And that was really a lot of work done, a lot of passion put into this meeting. And I remember it for this. I think some of you have recalled it, the spirit of Astana. I think this is what is important to recall. The spirit of Astana, which I would translate as the political attention. And this is what some have mentioned, maybe we should have another summit or not. I don't know, it's not up to me to dwell upon this, is a decision of the ministers. But whether there is a summit or not, what needs to come back to the organization is the spirit of Astana, which mainly translates into political attention of the leaders of the organization, which are in the 57 capitals. Now, from the Parliamentary Assembly point of view, we saw the situation last July when the 4 leaders of the OSCE executive structures and institutions could not be renewed. And we thought, what can the Parliamentary Assembly do? So we launched an initiative, which we called Call for Action, which now is being translated also into a process towards Helsinki plus 50, whereby we have engaged former Secretary General Lamberto Zanier to help us put together all the good ideas that are out there that have been developed for many years on how to reform the organization, on how to make this organization more effective, stronger, and how to make the organization do what it does best, which is indeed fostering dialogue between countries who have different opinions about their security, about their situations. And this effort has come up in a document that we called indeed a Call for Action, that has been signed by all the leaders of the OSCE who have served the organization at the highest level. Kanat Sadubayev is here, he's one of the signatories of this document. So all the former CIOs, all the former Secretary Generals, some have signed, some agreed with the document, but for the current functions that they have, they could not sign the document. But in principle, they all agree with this document, former Secretary General, former heads of institution, former presidents of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. So you have the entire OSCE families, so let's say the entire people who have served the OSCE for many years, who have launched a document which basically says we need to give a new impetus to the organization. We need to revitalize this organization. And coming to the Euro-Atlantic and Eurasian security concept, 10 years ago in Astana, when presenting the commemorative declaration towards a security community, President Nazarbayev said, we realize that the way to a true Euro-Atlantic and Eurasian community with the united and indivisible security will be long and torn. In fact, events in the last decade, starting from the Russian annexation of Crimea, made this way an extremely difficult one. However, in Astana, there was a consciousness that the OSCE could be the right platform to deal with this vision. And even in the light of the new challenges, especially the tense East-West relations, I'm convinced that we should all be, and we should all be convinced that this is still the right platform. The OSCE is inclusive, is comprehensive, and this is a unique added value we must preserve. Naturally, the commitments must be implemented and the principles cannot be violated. But the OSCE is a platform for dialogue, where we talk about problems, not a platform for mere condemnations. We have to really enter into this concept that we need to improve the dialogue between those who disagree. If we think about the current spirit that exists in the OSCE family, I think the Helsinki Final Act would never have been signed in 1975. And we cannot say the problems at that time were less. However, there was a political will to overcome them. My wish for this session, but also for the future, is that instead of talking about the future of Euro-Atlantic and Eurasian security community, we can try to talk about building synergies from Vancouver to Vladivostok altogether. And one more reflection on international cooperation. I mentioned earlier, part of this problem the OSCE is facing are due to the worldwide crisis of multilateralism. This doesn't mean that we should remain passive to this. Actually, it means that we, as the international community, should redouble our effort to prove that for the global challenges we are facing, the selfish recipe is not the answer. Only increased cooperation, and we've seen it also on the crisis of terrorism, health crisis, movement of people, climate change, only cooperation at all levels and joint solutions are effective. And the OSCE could serve as the best practice of this. And if only tried to really invest in the OSCE, we have the capacity to make good use of it. We mentioned about the OSCE activities, and let me tell you, as somebody who has served in the OSCE field operation for many years, I have seen the effectiveness of this organization at the grassroots level. I've seen many people benefiting from the work of the OSCE. Here we have representatives of the mission in Nur-Sultan, but there are many missions in the OSCE where women, men every day work very close to the end users, what I call the end users of the OSCE product, the citizens of the OSCE. And I think the OSCE does bring very good changes in the real life of people, in the everyday life of people. And I think this is a big secret which is not well highlighted at the highest level of the organization. And this is also the task, I think, of this conference and the task that we should bring back with us. Finally, one point on the role of the parliamentarians within the OSCE. I wish to draw your attention on two assets that we can benefit for the whole organization. The General Service of Parliamentary Diplomacy to provide an additional and useful platform for dialogue, especially in the current challenging geopolitical scenario, and the ability to mobilize national parliaments. We heard before from Mr. Sultanov how much parliamentarians can really influence also their governments, and we should use that much more. So do not hesitate to make use of this parliamentary asset. We are all components of a different organization, which I call the OSCE family. And as Helga Schmidt said recently in her first address to the Permanent Council, we should really try to build and forge an OSCE that can deliver as a whole. So, dear friends, dear excellencies, in conclusion, I would like just to say these 3 points. Yes, the OSCE is relevant now more than ever, but we need to bring back the Astana spirit together with high-level political attention to the organization's work. Second, we need to focus on all the concrete benefits that the OSCE can bring to our citizens and invest in them. And the added values that this organization are its inclusivity and capacity to foster dialogue. So if we compromise on that, we are compromising on the whole organization. So let the OSCE be the OSCE. And of course, the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly is at the disposal and the service of the organization to offer its contribution. Thank you again for this timely conference, and I look forward to the debate.